Before I etch on the details that I want to put back on the letters, I'm going to apply my surface finish. There are two approaches to this. You can either use metal polish or you can use steel wool. Steel wool will give you a matte brushed finish where you'll see the lines on the metal work. That gives you a nice matte finish. Or you can use the polish. I'll demonstrate both, but I tend to move more towards the matte finish. Just personal preference. To be able to apply polish, you need a small piece of cloth. And you're just going to dip that into the liquid, like so. You're then going to buff that onto the surface. Again, you want to be working in small circles ideally. You've got to put quite a bit of force behind this. If you think about sandpaper as small grits of sand stuck to a piece of paper that scratch the surface, polish is a liquid with those particles suspended in it. Now that doesn't look so great, but all I'm going to do now is fold the cloth over for a clean bit, and I'm now going to buff the surface. And you can see it's gone to a funny dark grey colour at the moment, but if I keep rolling the cloth round to a clean bit and I buff the surface, you can now see that all of those scuffs and scratches are gone, and you can see the light there. It is way more reflective. With polishing, it does take a few passes, so you have to repeat those steps. Apply a small amount of polish, scrub the surface with the cloth and the polish on it. Go from the bit you've just used, and you want to find a clean bit of cloth. Wipe away the excess. Find another clean bit of cloth. You have to find a clean bit every time. All that grey stuff is the aluminium dust being pulled away by the polish liquid. If you re-scrub that onto the surface, you're just going to scratch the material again. Ideally, you want to work in circles, but for these small, thin areas, you don't really have too much of a choice. You can actually see now the reflection of the camera, just the outline of it. If you do this 2 or 3 times all the way over, you end up with a really nice, almost mirrored finish. I prefer a matte finish, so I'm actually going to switch out and use the steel wool. The problem with steel wool is it does give you a nice matte brushed finish, so you can see all the lines going in one direction. The problem with this, and I'll show you, if I do it in a random way, you can actually see all of those lines, and it looks like it's just been sanded again. Not a great look. So you need to make sure that whatever direction you go in one part of your design, you need to do the same everywhere else. And this is why it's called brush, because you would pull this across the surface, brushing it, as it were. You do have to be careful with steel wool. It is essentially like cotton wool, but instead of cotton, it's steel. But because they are thin steel wires, sometimes you might find a sharp bit and it will poke you in the finger. It's not the most painful experience. However, because it's a very thin steel wire, it can sometimes jab you into the skin and stay there, which is obviously not good for you in the long run. So be careful when handling this stuff. Try not to get sort of these sharp, pointy bits into your skin. So I'm going to go along, and again, I'm keeping a uniform direction. I am always going left to right on my design. Although I'm scrubbing it back and forth, always going the same way. So, brush the dust off. You can see there all of those lines on the surface are now going sideways. It's still shiny. You can't get much of a reflection off of it, but it leaves you with quite a nice finish. So depending on whether you want to polish or whether you want to use the steel wool, it's up to you. There is pros and cons of either, and one is not quicker than the other. So although this brush method I'm doing now seems like it's quicker, there are small details that I am missing. So I will have to go back over my work 2 or 3 times before I get it right. And you can see as well the steel wool actually breaks down. So I've done once all the way over. If I've got to do 2 or 3 times, I am going to have to get a new bit of steel wool because it is starting to fall apart. Finish off that last bit there. And again. Nice shiny finish. You can see there's still a few scratches and marks from where I sanded it. So like I said, you do have to take 2 or 3 goes at this. It's a little bit nicer on this side. These were some of the pitting marks I was talking about earlier. These small dents are from where you've used the metal vise. So you can try and buff those out, but it might take you a bit of time. So just beware of that.